Good morning. So before we get into the details, I want to orient you to what this session's going to be about. This is going to be about your transition from graduation to actual clinical practice. And it can feel very confusing, so there are a few systems involved. We have to deal with certification bodies and licensing boards and federal identifiers and prescription registration. So I want to simplify that process for you. I have personally gone through this pathway a few times. As you can see, I hold certifications in adult health, family, and psychiatric mental health. This was adult health before they developed the adult GERI primary care NP specialty. Back then, just adult health. Now, I've helped some graduates navigate this, so I'm going to show you the formal requirements and the most efficient way to get this done, especially if you want to practice in New York State, which has a little bit of its own licensing process. And by the end of this, you should have a clear roadmap from graduation to seeing patients. So you know how much I like steps? This slide summarizes the entire process. There are 5 milestones between finishing your program and being fully operational in practice. First things first, you have to apply for national certification, either through ANCC or the AANP. Second, once your eligibility is confirmed, you receive an Authorization to test, which allows you to schedule your board exam. And third, after passing boards, you apply for New York State NP certification through the New York State Education Department. And fourth, once you get that license, then you apply for the National Provider Identifier. And then finally, if your role is going to include prescribing controlled substances, then you apply for your DEA registration. The key idea here is this is a sequence. If you go out of order, things will get greatly delayed and maybe more expensive. All right, so in the United States, there are 2 major certifying bodies. You have the American Nurses Credentialing Center and the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners. Now, both are nationally recognized and both are accepted in the state of New York. The biggest difference are the style of the exam. ANCC will typically ask you questions about professional practice and policy and research, in addition to clinical content, whereas the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners tends to be more focused on diagnosis and treatment. For most graduates, the decision comes down to program recommendations, employer expectations, and recertification preferences. All are accepted across every venue. Psychiatric exam is fairly new for the American Academy of Nurse Practitioners, but it's out there. From a New York State licensing perspective, either certification works just fine. Also, I think so does also American Academy of Critical Care Nurses if your specialty is going to be acute care NP. So that's another one to keep in mind as well. So what do you need to do? Well, the eligibility requirements for certification are fairly standardized regardless of specialty. The most important thing for New York is you have to hold an active RN license in New York. Second, you have to graduate from an accredited nurse practitioner program. And third, you must have completed at least 500 faculty supervised clinical hours in your specialty population. Fourth, your program must include the 3 core graduate courses known as the 3 Ps: pathophysiology, physical assessment, and pharmacology. Your validation of education form becomes part of that certification process, and it attests that you have completed those courses. One of the most useful strategies is applying for certification before graduation. You don't need to wait until your degree is officially posted. As long as your coursework and clinical hours are complete, your program director can sign a validation of education form, which allows you to submit your application. Doing this early allows you to get your authorization to test sooner, which means that you can take your boards shortly after graduation rather than waiting several months when it's crowded and test spots are hard to come by. Just remember that your certification is only finalized once the certifying body gets that official transcript showing degree conferral. That's why they call your score, if you're doing ANCC, that they give you, they call it a preliminary score, because you're not technically certified till that degree is conferred and the transcripts are in. This validation of education form is one of the most important documents in the process. It essentially attests that your program director is confirming that you completed all the required items for your specialty. Without this document, your application does not move forward. The most common issue that causes delays is missing signatures, outdated forms, mismatch between transcript and the actual document, so accuracy matters. Now, once your application and documentation are submitted, the certifying body will review your materials. That takes about 4 to 6 weeks. After approval, you're going to receive this authorization to test called the ATT. At that point, you can now reach out to Prometric, who gives the test. You usually have about a 90-day window to schedule and complete the exam. Most graduates will get preliminary exam results immediately after finishing if you do ANCC. I'm not sure if AANP does that or they would notify you later. Now, once you pass your boards, the next step, if you want to practice in New York State, you have to have 3 forms. Form number 1, you can start as soon as you're done with school. That is, you submit Form 1 found on the New York State Education Department website. Form 2 is sent by your school confirming the education, and Form 3, your certification body notifies the state that you have since passed. Form 1 has to go first because that starts a file. If you don't open the file at the state by submitting Form 1, nobody knows what to do with what other people are telling them about you, and you could have delays. All 3 documents have to align, especially for your approved specialty track. All right, now New York State licensing is not always fast, and processing can take up to 4 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer depending on how many applications they need to process. So one practical tip is to submit your Form 1 immediately after passing your boards rather than waiting. Another thing is to make sure that your legal name is consistent across all systems: certification, New York State Education Department, and NPPES. Because a name mismatch can cause delays at any point in the process. Now let me give you a little brief caveat story. Suppose you are the student who, say, passed your boards in June and assumed that you would be working by July, but you waited 3 weeks after passing the boards to submit Form 1. Well, the school now is delayed in sending out Form 2, and by the time everything reached New York State Education Department, that application has entered the review queue at that time. So the total delay is about 10 weeks. The lesson here is simple. Submit your application materials as early as possible and coordinate with the school immediately after graduation. Small delays at the beginning can cascade into months before you can legally start practicing. What about this NPI thing? Well, after your state license is issued, the next step is going to be apply for your National Provider Identifier. The NPI is issued through the National Plan and Provider Enumeration System, and that's managed by CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. This number becomes your universal professional identifier in the healthcare system. It's used for billing, credentialing, prescribing, insurance enrollment. The application process is online and free, and approval happens very quickly, sometimes within minutes. You'll get an instant number. It's like applying for a tax ID number if you start a business. It's very fast. Once the information is submitted, the final step is simply to submit the application. In most cases, the system issues your NPI almost immediately, and many people receive it within minutes, although the system may take up to 24 hours, and you will get an official letter by email, and it will also then, when they look you up, can appear with the National Provider Registry. You should know that's a publicly available database. It will list your name and your address and your phone number. So some people like to make it list, say, a place of employment. So that's something you're going to have to decide on. There is one important sequencing. You should apply for the NPI after receiving approval from the New York State, because the NPI application requires your state license number. Once you have it, then you need it for the next step in the credentialing process, which is to apply for your DEA if you are going to prescribe controlled substances. So you need the state license to get the NPI, you need the NPI to get the DEA. When you apply for an NPI number, you need to pick a taxonomy code. A taxonomy code is the thing that identifies your clinical specialty within a healthcare system. So for example, a family nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse practitioner, acute care, etc. Selecting the correct code is important because if you're going to work at an insurance credentialing system, they rely on these codes to determine your scope of practice and reimbursement eligibility. A common mistake is selecting the generic NP code instead of the specialty code. The system technically allows it, but it creates confusion during credentialing, and many will require a correction later. Easy enough to do, you just log back in the system and change it later, but if they start to credential under the generic code and then they hit a snafu because they want that specialty primary code or a site code, you've delayed the system. The fastest way is to select the specific 10-digit taxonomy code that matches your certification. For most of you in this program, that's going to be psych mental health or adult gero primary care. Entering that code correctly ensures that your federal provider number reflects your specialty from the start. Well, what do you do if you hold more than one certification? Mainly you're in the postmaster's program, right? So you can hold multiple taxonomy codes in your NPI. For example, if you're both family and then psychiatric nurse practitioner. However, one taxonomy code has to be designated as primary while the others are listed as secondary. This can be updated later as your practice evolves. The primary taxonomy needs to reflect the type of work you primarily do. So for example, if you're in clinical practice is psychiatry, then you pick the Psych NP taxonomy code. This matters. Why? Because insurance credentialing systems will use it to determine your panel eligibility and billing classification. It can also influence your referral patterns and attribution models in the healthcare systems. Because when they're looking for a referral that takes the insurance, they interface with the NPI taxonomy codes, and that's how they decide who to refer to. So it should align with your practice. Now, a dual certified family nurse practitioner and psych NP, say you're working in family now, you want to go to psych, and you leave your family practice taxonomy listed as the primary, and then you begin working full-time in psych because you're licensed, credentialed, certified, ready to go. The problem is an issue is encountered when they try to credential you with behavioral health insurance panels because your code's coming up as family practice. So then the insurance sees the primary taxonomy code as family practice, flags the application, and it can take weeks, which may delay your credentialing. So the key takeaway is it should match what you're doing. If you're doing both, my recommendation is to make the primary taxonomy code the higher level, which is psychiatry. That's the specialty that brings in more money. Leave the family practice or primary care as secondary. It will interpret how insurance panels will see you. But normally you're working in one or the other. Unless you're in private practice, then you're going to have to decide what your reimbursement will look like, or you go cash only. Once you have your state license and NPI, you can apply then for DEA registration. So if your role includes prescribing controlled medications, stopping, starting, titrating, weaning, the DEA registration allows clinicians to prescribe Schedule 2 through 5 medications. A newer requirement is this MATE Act, and this requires that you do a one-time 8-hour education focused on opioid prescribing and substance use disorders. You need to finish that before you can apply for the DEA because you will attest that you've done this course. Most pharmacology programs let you do this course before you graduate, and then you just do a 3-hour refresher every 3 years. So the DEA application is submitted online. It's Form 224. For nurse practitioners, you need to select the category mid-level practitioner because, lobbying groups. And the current cost is $888 for a 3-year registration period. In New York State specifically, once you get your DEA number, now you also have to register with the iStop prescription monitoring program, which tracks your controlled substances and prescribing. That also happens to be where you get to order your prescription pads, where they send you the state, what they call triplicate paper, but it's not triplicate anymore. But that's where you get official state prescription pads as well when you register in the iStop. Now, understanding New York State's controlled policy regulations are important, so you should review Public Health Law Article 33 or insert that into your local LLM AI chatbot and get a rundown as to how that applies to you. It's also important for safe prescribing. You can see where they're getting their meds from, how many times, and you have to check that before you dispense any controlled substance to the patient. You must look them up, and there's a reference number you will get when you do look them up to include in the documentation. Never prescribe any controlled substance without proper documentation. It matters a lot. Well, you've graduated, so now what? How do you tell people who you are and what you do? This is a recommended credential listing by the American Nurses Credentialing Centers. Credentials should be listed from the most permanent to the most variable. So that means your highest academic degree in the specialty comes first. So for example, I have a doctorate of nursing practice and my master's is in education. So the highest one is the DNP, the next is the EDM. I don't list the master's of science that I got when I graduated from Hunter because it's assumed by the DNP. And then the certifications that follow, ANP, FNP, Psych Mental Health NP, I just list them in date order. I got the A, then the F, then the P. And then that's your professional licensure. And the final thing are board certifications. Honorary designations and fellowships would come at the end. So if I were a fellow in the American Academy of something, which I'm not, that would come after the PMH and PBC. So the correct order just helps maintain professional clarity and avoids unnecessary clutter. I've seen people drop the BC. You should try to make that consistent across things that are professional, email signatures, article publications, when you speak on boards, you attend conferences. It just keeps you findable and identifiable. This slide is just the different portals involved in certification, licensing, NPI registration, DEA registration. If you bookmark these sites, then you'll have direct access and you'll be able to go to them as needed. I also strongly advise you to digitize and save all of your important documents in cloud storage, Dropbox, Google Drive, iCloud, with, what should you save there? A copy of your unofficial transcripts, the actual certificate granted you, the DEA certificate once you get it, your state license and registration for both your RN and NP, and an updated resume or CV. And then, in your downtime, you should memorize your NPI, your state license number, and your DEA number. Those are things you will be asked, especially if you're ordering medications over the phone, supplies, completing forms. You should know all of those things. Some places require a stamp that shows it's official. That's the stuff you put on your stamp. Your name, your certification, your license, your degrees, your NPI, your state license, plus or minus your DEA. You don't want that getting out there so that someone does not start ordering things under your name and number. And also, make a folder with a year stamp tracking your continuing education, because you're going to need that for recertification. You've come this far, you probably don't want to take the test again, so make sure you're doing your CEs and tracking them easily. Just take a snapshot, scan it right in, you're good to go. The other thing is, all of this is expensive, right? The licensing, the credentialing, the continuing ed conferences, all that stuff. Make a folder, label it tax year 2026 or 27 or 25 or whenever you're going to tax year it, right? And keep track of how much you spent. Take a picture of your paid and the certificate, right? So it's matched up, and speak to your accountant about what of this can be deducted, conference costs and the like. Soon the paperwork will be finished and the real work is going to begin. Every patient you see is going to trust you with something that matters deeply to them. So take that responsibility seriously and keep learning, and you'll build a career that makes a difference. Thanks for watching.